Zabriskie Point now. Why choose this one to discuss next? Well, my vessel is currently lost at sea. They were screening this at Ritz Randwick. I hate that cinema and that part of Sydney, but what else am I supposed to do while I wait for my vessel to return to the shore? Plus, hey, AOD's current feature in development was at one time inspired by films like Zabriskie Point, and still is, but to a lesser extent than it was initially. But also, why the bloody hell not? Antonioni is one of my favourite directors in film history. FOTD has discussed Blow Up before, and La Ventura. Let's explore another of this auteur's seminal features. The Blow Up review was one of the uploads AOD was most proud of, so naturally Barry Moore basically decimated the assessment in that video with his own excellently articulated comment, such as the life of bad karma afflicted AOD. My favourite Antonioni film is Red Desert, followed probably by La Ventura and Il Grido. La Notte, The Passenger, Blow Up, and likely Zabriskie Point are in the next tier down for me. Potentially the most original of the Italian directors, which is to say, no one came along who was a rip-off as such of Antonioni, because it was too difficult to actually rip him off. His approach to literary cinema was so original that even digital auteurs haven't bothered to explore his strain of compositionally experimental, narrative-centric, counter-formalist studies on the rather dizzy, ontologically fragile balance of post-war mid-20th century materialist European, or English language, psychological, post-secular, clandestinely narcissistic identity. And let's get a reminder of a more authentic film about topics relating to leftist domestic insurgency, class struggles in Southwest America, the virtues and foibles of aggressively righteous revolutionaries, and the exploration of alternative ways to freedom, the aspiration of liberation, and examination of an embittered, wishful insurgent's resentful fantasies. As AOD said in an earlier upload on this channel, I wish the budget for one battle after another went toward the actual revolution instead, and to add Gerald Bruckner's own spin on it, I hope someone decides to blow up Paul Thomas Anderson's mansion in the near future. Fuck those Southern California millionaires playing pretend as radical socialists because they hold the most milquetoast basic bitch liberal beliefs and are opposed to the not-so-crypto-fascism of Donald Trump and his essentially brown shirt, presumably brain-dead fanatics. Yeah, what a radical take, you LARPing posers. I do not wish any of you well. You're all going to be rotting in the lavas of hell. So, very sadly, no screen caps while that vessel is lost somewhere out in the ocean. Just enjoy an image of the poster and this raving lunatic. Read out by AOD, written by Gerald Bruckner, or whatever the fucking fuck. Zabriskie Point is probably a bit hated by actual revolutionaries because it actually dared to have just a bit of a laugh at the young, usually pretentious socialist organizations, even though the film is evidently far more condemnatory of the rich corporate elites. Anything that isn't a dry, clinical statement about one's revolutionary ideals or strategies is considered bourgeois, individualist, escapist distraction, because how dare you not just try to impress everyone in the room at how serious you are about your socialist power fantasies? How dare you totally inadvertently invalidate my aspirations by not actually trying to impress people as your motivator in life? How dare you live for yourself and not for the approval of other people, bourgeois, socialists, or wishful bullies who are ridiculed into their bedrooms to impress the nasty boys who had to torment others via 4chan instead? I'd recommend these dry, terminally humorless, no fun allowed, sorry types read Marcuse's The Aesthetic Dimension, but they dismiss him as bourgeois, individualist, not performatively serious or radical enough, which, you know, what a terrible crime, to consider one's own conscience first and not what will make me seem more radical or loyal or consistent with the allocated script, what they call the cause, so that I can be considered one of the most authentic of this essentially little reject social group. And I'm all about reject social groups, as a reject among rejects myself, but not when they act like cliquey bundles of sticks like most socialist groups, certainly the fucking young people, always end up inevitably being. And while Zabriskie Point does descend into morally indifferent farce, as Fassbinder's The Third Generation snootily does, a very impressive and entertaining film, but a really condescending take on the post-war leftist project, it's so middle class in its presented stances, I feel as though. It can be said, Zabriskie Point, to lack the seriousness, though they betray a certain bourgeois naivety and a slight whiff of radical chic of some of Godard's late 60s, early 70s films, such as La Chinoise, Weekend. Weekend may have been slightly ineffective as a revolutionary polemic, but its firmness on its political stance is still absolutely clear. Or Vladimir at Rosa, or certainly not as serious as Robert Kramer's utterly extraordinary films, such as Ice from 1970. Ice, not to be confused with the immigration enforcement fascists that we know in the 21st century, but it's just called Ice, as in the cold material, and the frozen water. But that film Ice from 1970, which is one of the most exciting moments in the history of all of American or English language cinema. Or, not as serious as even a slightly underrated and very tragically relevant film like Bergman's Shame stands as. Seriously, consider what Bergman wanted to relay there. Many were snootily relegating it as Vietnam War era zeitgeist window, time capsule novelty, arrogantly unaware that a scale of slaughter would repeat itself with the overt complicity of effectively the entire Western world, as opposed to the American invasion of Vietnam, and that the film was not a depiction of one era, but an illustration of the malaise felt by those who are agonizingly aware of what is happening in the world outside their own country, and what its state is at least in part responsible for, where colonial or neo-colonial nation-states are concerned. I had a great time at the cinema. I was very surprised when we arrived at the end. I thought only an hour and 40 minutes had passed, but by the time everything was blowing up, well, I knew that more time had passed than I had thought. I hadn't seen this film in probably just under 10 years. Last time probably was 2016, and the first time I think was in 2013 or 14. We're going to close it here. I, Bruckner, really need to stop potentially getting AOD into trouble. That's the reason it was agreed I would write these pieces instead in the first place.